Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, GordoGambles, and we're here for a brand new segment. This time we're talking about some NASCAR, and that is something that definitely I've been looking to get into, and there's no better way than getting into it than with an amazing co-host like I have today. I'll introduce him shortly, but briefly before I hop into it, just want to let you guys know this is what we're covering weekly. Every single Thursday, we will talk about DFS and betting for the upcoming race. This guy bringing on not only have the opportunity to talk on this platform here, but I will also leave all his resources down below. So if you guys want to know how he's targeting this NASCAR slate, he has tons of content out there. Without further ado, let's bring him in here. My man, Ryan Larkin. How are we doing, my friend?
What's up, Gordo? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this race. You know, it's time for me to dive in the deep end and really learn a new sport and a new DFS angle, and I'm happy to have you on to talk about it.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we can team up and hopefully provide some fun NASCAR content for your YouTube channel.
No, for sure, dude. I'm looking forward to it. I'd even tried a little a thumbnail there. We're getting fancy. We're getting going, but no, it's going to be a fun slate. I was looking at the salaries out. I know we still have to wait for the placements and stuff, but you know me, I love my DFS, and I'm sure that this is going to be a new realm for me to tackle and hopefully get some takedowns thanks to your help. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to get you on the NASCAR train and have some fun. We got a good 9-week stretch here where we can kind of get you in the program and get you knowing some things, and the next year you can go to get some takedowns and win some money.
That sounds beautiful to me. Now, before we jump into it, again, this is the first time doing the show, so I'd love for you to have the opportunity to let everybody know where you post your content and where and what you do in terms of from the racing perspective. Because I know you don't only do NASCAR, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I do F1 as well. So all my content's at dailyfanracing.com. So Brett Appley, who does MMA content at dailyfanmma.com, he's been a friend of mine for over a decade now, long before he even started watching MMA. And so he got me into DFS. We were just toying around, and then I did some writing for a couple other sites, and then just things happen in life where it's like, hey, let's team up and give this a go more on my own. And your site can host it, and we'll do some things. And it's gone really, really well. But I cover all 3 NASCAR series there. Do full slate breakdowns, podcast for Cup, podcast for F1 as well. But do rankings, projections, pretty much anything that there is to do. If there's bets I like, I'll post those as well as official plays. I think I had a couple of bad weeks here recently, but I'm up like 13, 14 units since I've started doing that. So being up's a good thing. And then for F1, same deal, full slate breakdowns, rankings, podcasts, the whole lot. Brett joins me on the F1 podcast because he loves F1, so he likes talking about it there. So we have him on. And then, we do everything through that website. I also do a video with the Mayo Media Network, just a quick 8-minute hit there. And so just try to do as much as I can. And I got Twitter Spaces on Wednesday nights as well. So just trying to get the name out there as much as we can and do as much and have as much fun as we can with it, right? Because at the end of the day, this is more of a hobby than it is a profession in a lot of ways. So if we can make some money and have some fun doing it, that's the goal.
Well, I know you're a sharp man, so I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. I've been lucky enough to hear a few of your stuff in the past, but it'll be nice having the opportunity to see you side by side, ask you some of those questions, and really see firsthand how you're targeting this NASCAR slate. All right, let's dive right into it. You know me, I know I love talking bets, so we're going to start on the betting side of things, and we're going to go over to DraftKings today. That's where we're going to look at a few of the lines. We've talked about it a bit in the back room, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. If we had to choose an early on prediction, how do you see the case going down? Who do you see ending as the winner?
So for me, the books got it right this week, which is always frustrating because you don't get good numbers on guys. But Danny Hamlin is the rightful favorite to win this race, plus 550. Still, I mean, it's not an awful number, but you're going into it knowing there's 15 other guys that can win this race probably, and anything could happen. So, but that's still the favorite to win. He's been extremely fast everywhere on these intermediate style tracks, which Kansas is. So he's the clear favorite. And then the books have it right. Kyle Busch coming in just above him at plus 600 surprised me a little bit, but his speed has been good as well. He just hasn't delivered the results that I feel like deserve that number, but he is definitely a super big threat. Something that you're not going to be familiar with probably is, the manufacturer aspect of NASCAR. So there's Toyota, Chevrolets, and Ford. They have their own simulation setups. They have their own engine, setup. So the teams are kind of segregated based off of manufacturer, which makes sense, obviously. Well, the Toyota teams overall on the intermediate tracks, the Kansas, the Charlottes, Darlington, any of those type of tracks, they've kind of been the class of the field. They've had a slight step up on everybody. And so when you go into this race, you see them. I think Truex is even the third highest odds or whatever for the win. I think he's plus 700. I don't know if he got pulled back up there, but basically you see all the Toyotas are at the head of that list there because of the speed they've shown on this track type. So you're not getting good numbers on it because the books are aware of what they're capable of.
For sure. And it does look like we got some decent money. We've talked about it. This is a high variance sport, right? So it's a spot where, if you pick someone to win golf, it's going to be around these same odds because it is another high variance sport here. You have all these other aspects coming into play. And that's why when you have someone you predict to win at plus 550, it does look like a pretty number, but there's a lot more coming into it. So I'm happy to see you agree with the top one. When I'm doing my preliminary research, I'm looking around, looking at what happened last year. I'm looking at all that stuff. I did look into all the manufacturer stuff like that. I managed to look at last year's race. And I know that, previous things never really applied to what's going on right now. But last year's winner was Kyle Larson. He's sitting at the 5th best odds. Do you think that has any impact on this week, or is there any value there? Or is a repeat performance more of a Cinderella dream?
So, last year they got a brand new car this year. So last year's generation of cars gone. This year's has really evened the playing field. So for the previous 3 years or so, the Hendrick team, which Kyle Larson now drives for, have been lights out the best on the intermediate tracks. And he went out and won 10 races last year because his car was just better than everyone, right? The new car has equaled the playing field a lot. There's still teams that find little advantages, but they're small. They're a lot smaller than they were in the past. So, Kyle Larson, I believe, finished second here earlier this year. They ran a race at Kansas back in May. I believe he finished second. He led 25 or 30 laps, if memory serves correct. So he was still a competitive, front runner who was a contender to win. So, from everything I can tell from most of the people in the industry, they're liking him as that top Chevrolet pick. So, yeah, it's a good number for a guy who runs top 5 here almost every time, has race-winning upside. We know he'll have a fast car. So he's definitely in contention, and the number's decent. Honestly, I think he's a better play than Chase Elliott, who's plus 750 there.
Fair play. And this is where I'm going to get greedy. And thank you for answering my question. This is where I'm going to get greedy right now. Do you have any long shot winners you like that may have better odds than the line does entail?
So right there at the bottom there is Bubba Wallace at plus 2,000. So he's another Toyota driver, not one of those Toyota drivers. He back here in May, he had a super fast car, but his pit crew continuously hurt him. And it was a situation where he'd drive up the 7th and then be 15th when he came off pit road. And it was every single time. And he had the most top 15 passes or, quality passes in the race at like 65 or 63 or something like that. And he showed a ton of speed, but he was constantly battling track position. Well, his teammate, who never battled track position really in that race, won the race. So they're a 2-car team at 23-11. Kurt Busch won here with that team. And Bubba Wallace finished 10th. He had a really good day, but he could have been so much more. He had a car capable of contending for the win as well. Then you fast forward through other races. He's run top 5. He was 5th at Pocono, I believe. He qualified on the pole at Michigan. These are higher speed tracks where it's more about kind of speed, and mechanical grip matters to an extent, and they've got that figured out, I guess, is the setup for these style tracks they have figured out as a whole at Toyota. And Bubba has showed really good speed all the way back through May. I can see him showing up, qualifying top 5, running top 5 all race, and potentially winning this race. And that's not hyperbole. That is legit the upside he has. So I'm really excited for him because he's never really done that and delivered a win. And he typically runs 8th to 12th on great days. He's getting this plus 2,000 number, right? He's not going to get the respect of Kyle Busch, who has 60 career wins, and Denny Hamlin, who has 50 career wins, and those type of guys. He doesn't get that respect, and from an odd standpoint, but his car and the speed he has shown at times this year is plenty capable of winning.
Awesome. I like that fact you mentioned the top 5, top 3. You had the opportunity to bet on those as well. But that plus 2,000 winner number is an absolute beauty to look at right here. But let's dive into some some props. We're gonna look at some matchups, some group winners right here. And I know we talked about this. Is there anything that's really jumping off the page for you when you look at these head-to-head matchups?
So this week in head-to-head matchups are a little tricky before you get to practice and qualifying because you don't know the true speed of a car. You don't know if someone just looks super slow in practice, right? So doing it on a Thursday can be a little tricky. We'll have more information on Saturday, but the ones that I really like is Cedric minus 110 versus Chase Briscoe. So Austin Cedric versus Chase Briscoe. To me, that is a situation where Chase Briscoe has become a 17th place car almost every week. Now, he has these weird moments where he shows up and he's contending for the race win. That happened at Charlotte. He obviously won at Phoenix way earlier in the year, a track that doesn't really correlate to Kansas. But for the rest of the time, he looks pretty bang average, which isn't exciting. Cindric and Penske as a whole seems to be the best Ford team of the group. So I'd say Logano is number one of that Penske group, Blaney, and then Cindric's number 3. But Cindric's able to get these top 15 finishes. He either finished 11th or 12th here earlier this year and was the second highest finishing Ford. Briscoe's another Ford driver, and their speed just hasn't been the same, in my opinion. So when you see it's a 50-50 bet there. I like Cindric based off of the speed he's shown. He's a little bit more consistent as well. So I just think it's a good spot, especially given the results here earlier this year.
Awesome. I like that. And of course, when I'm looking at these things, again, as a newer person to this space, I see the favorite to win it all in Hamlin right here, only at minus 115 over a guy in Kyle Busch. Again, two guys who are supposed to do well, but you have the guy who's implied to do better from a win perspective with only a slightly better line in the head-to-head. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I'll give you one better. I think Hamlin wins that matchup, but it's very tight. If you go to the highest finisher within manufacturer, which you'll be able to go if you go to race lines and head over. The highest finishing Toyota line has Kyle Busch as the favorite at plus 225 and Danny Hamlin or plus 250, I believe. And then Danny Hamlin's plus 275. So for some reason that number's flipped there. So if you're thinking about playing those drivers head to head, you can get a better number on Hamlin here than you can against Kyle Busch elsewhere. Which I found interesting. I'm not really sure why that's like that, but as far as the head-to-head matchup, I favor Hamlin. I think he's the favorite to win for a reason, so he should be slightly favored in that head-to-head. But Kyle Busch is probably the next best guy, so it makes sense for it to be pretty close.
Awesome. I like that, and good job pointing that out. I have no idea why that line's so wide, especially with the big plus money number there as well. It's a much more appealing look. Let's move over to the final aspect of the betting and the group winners. And we have 4 groups here. Anything else sticking out at the page to you? Once again, of course, we have another Hamlin versus Butch matchup here, but there's a few things we see down here. We see your boy Bubba Wallace having a plus 320 number here. What are your thoughts on any group winners?
So I want Bubba Wallace in that group. That's I'm glad you brought that out. I was gonna shout that out too. So, Ford, as I mentioned earlier this year at this track, were not very good. And at most intermediates, they've been the 3rd-tier team. They did not have manufacturer. They did not have a car finish in the top 10 here earlier this year. So when I think about that and I think about the speed they've shown in general, the only time they've really succeeded, and most of us come from Kevin Harvick or Joey Logano, are tracks where there's extremely high tire wear or the driver can make a big difference. So Kevin Harvick is, in my opinion, probably the best of his generation. If he's not, he's top 3. He is unbelievable. And he could do things at tracks like Darlington and Richmond that others just simply can't. And that's been the case for, 2 decades now. He's phenomenal. And he gets the respect as a result. Joey Logano is a past champion. He won the championship 3 years ago. He gets the respect as a result. But Bubba Wallace finished ahead of all these guys here earlier this year. I've already commented on the speed that Toyotas have had as an advantage over Ford. I just don't see why he's got the best odds out of this group, basically. Why he's not the favorite of this group. In my opinion, he should be based off of everything we kind of know. And that, to me, makes it a great value. It's a great area to attack because if that car does have the speed that it showed earlier this year at this track and really at all these types of tracks, man, he's gonna beat these guys. There's not a lot of doubt in my mind. So at that point, it becomes, does variance get you, right? Does he have a motor issue or bad pit stop like he had a bunch, or a flat tire, or any number of things that can happen, or someone just crashed in front of him and he can't avoid it? There's a lot of variance aspects to DFS, or to betting in NASCAR in general, but that number is just wrong, in my opinion. And I get why the other guys get the respect, but it's just wrong, in my opinion.
Awesome. You know me, I love a big plus money number. Anything else jumping out of the other three groups, or should we move on to some DraftKings?
Nothing really jumps out. I know I'll give one more matchup just because it comes in at plus money, and I know you like the plus sign. Christopher Bell plus 105 versus Truex. It's pretty close. It's another Toyota matchup. So, they definitely did a good job. Hamlin versus Kyle Busch, Bell versus Truex. These are, Toyota matchups. They got Chase Elliott versus Kyle Larson. Those are teammates as well with the Chevy camp. So Christopher Bell beat Truex here earlier this year, straight up. One finished fifth, the other finished sixth. Bell, for me, has been better this year. With the new car, he has been a little step ahead of Truex all year long. Truex has had flashes, but he hasn't delivered. Bell is in the playoffs. He's going to get, if there is any advantage to be gained, like a motor with just slightly more horsepower or any bit, it's going to go to Bell because he's in the playoffs and Truex isn't. So you can say maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe that's a bad way of thinking about it just because it's probably irrelevant. But there's also the potential that Bell is getting a slight advantage, whether it be the right front tire changer because he needs that help or whatever it may be. But even if that isn't the case and they're completely the same, Bell's still been better. And to me, when you get a driver who's been better at plus money like that, I just think it's a good spot. I would favor him in this matchup. He qualified on the pole for this race earlier this year, led a bunch of laps, and I believe he had a tire go down while leading. It might have happened under caution zone, but tire went down. He had to battle back throughout the entire race to get back to that top five finish. So Christopher Bell's a guy that shows a lot of speed. When the car's right, he can win a race. And I just feel like he should be the favorite in this matchup. I feel like that number should be switched. So I like the value.
I love it, man. Lots of insight I'm gaining here, and I'll definitely be looking at those. And I love the extra plus money shout as well. But let's move on, man. We got another aspect to cover here. We've covered the betting side of things. Let's jump into the DraftKings side of things. And again, this is going to be a bit different because we do not have those the placements yet, or where they're going to start.
Yeah, so starting positions, yeah,
for sure.
Exactly.
So we have the salaries, but there's still a lot to learn. And again, we've talked about a few things already. I think it's a nice little look for us to have that guy in here because not only do you like him from a winning perspective plus 2,000, but he is your favorite DFS target. Talk to us a bit more about Bubba Wallace from a DraftKings perspective.
Yeah, so we can throw out the concept of him winning, right? We don't even have to factor that in here. I did pick him on the Twitter Spaces last night as my race winner, and you do that kind of for fun, also because you get a plus 2,000 number. But it's like picking Julian Rosa to be the highest scorer on a slate. Like it's not super likely to happen, but man, it's fun to say it or what, and you're trying to get an edge and have some fun with it. And when you have the context of NASCAR, knowing that these races are just crazy, you can kind of get away with saying that sometimes on a Wednesday. So, that's why I put it out there. But you're talking about a guy that's an extreme value. If he should finish top 10 in this race, flat out, he should finish top 10. And when I build lineups, especially for these intermediate tracks with, 400 miles, there's only so many points that can be had by dominators, by your race winners. And that mid-tier group kind of gets a little bit more of value. And if this guy can run sixth and score 40 DFS points, or fifth and score 40 DFS points before we even factor in fast laps or things like that, he can put up a really good number. I don't know where he'll qualify. He can qualify third, and it really takes some steam off of him. But he can still finish fifth with 20 fast laps and score 45 points at 8K, which is still a good total. You'll like that in that mid-tier in terms of value. And then the upside is, he can go out there and lead this race for a chunk and gets a bunch of fast laps and score 70 DFS points and really separate himself from the field. So to me, the upside is why I really, really like him. The car is going to have a ton of speed. And if this dude qualifies 17th or 20th for some reason, I'm going to be thrilled because I'm going to expect him to march to the front, get place differential points, and really only add to what his upside is. If he was 9,500, yeah, you're not as excited about it because you're worried about him not being as good as his Toyota friends and Hamlin and Kyle Busch and those guys. But I just feel like this has got a great value to it. And if he has a clean race, he's going to be towards the front.
I love it, man. And I know you. I appreciate you pointing out those UFC references, the Julian Erosa. You need those guys in the mid range who are going to go out there and separate themselves. But let's talk about this higher echelon here. And in UFC DFS, we have that 9K range. We have that top price tags. We have the 10K range. Looks like we have 6 drivers, all that over 10K. One of them even over 11K. How do you see yourself targeting this upper echelon group?
Yeah, so and we can correlate it with or compare it to F1. I should say or F1. Jesus, UFC. We'll get there eventually. We can compare it to F1 in the sense that when you get those super high price guys like 9,500, those big favorites, you really have to first figure out if they can pay that price off, right? You're wondering, if it's Marab versus some scrub, you're like, yeah, Marab Dvalishvili is going to get 15 takedowns and he's just going to put up a number. He has that ability to separate himself. Well, in NASCAR, we're looking for race dominators, guys that can lead 70, 80, 100 laps, and then hopefully get 40, 50 fast laps on the other side of that, and really add essentially 50 additional points to their total, right? And we have 267 laps in this race. If you have 2 guys that do that, you have 2 guys that, as long as they finish up front, are going to score 90 points, while the rest of the field is going to score, the good plays in the rest of the field are going to score 45 or 50 points. So they are separating themselves by a huge amount from the rest of the field. So, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, those are huge dominators. They've shown that throughout their careers. They have great speed. They are super high potential to do that. Truex, Bell in the Toyota camp can do that. Ross Chastain had a ton of speed this year. So of those guys, those are probably the ones I'm most interested in. Tyler Reddick's a good contrarian play in this range as well. But when you're playing them in your lineup, you're playing them because you think they can lead laps and they can pay off the price with what we call dominator points, right? So I really think Hamlin is the top play for that. I'd love to play him a bunch. Kyle Busch can be an easy pivot off that. And it really comes down to where they qualify. If Kyle Busch qualifies in the pole, you're going to load up on him, right? If Denny Hamlin qualifies on the pole, you're going to load up on him a lot more than if they qualified 4th versus the other guy. So there's way you're going to play with that for ownership purposes and things. But for the most part, I'm playing 2 guys in this range most likely. I'm going to attack like a Denny Hamlin and a Ross Chastain, and that may depend on where they qualify or what I see their upside being. But I'm going to hopefully hit 2 of these guys that score 80 points, 70, 80, 90 points, and that really separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
Hey, awesome. I love those comparisons you're making as well. It's really making it easier for me to get on here. And it's looking really interesting, and I'm kind of getting there. But when I'm building my other DraftKings lineups, not only do I have to have those guys up top who are going to do well for me, but you mentioned that contrarian play. Reddick is going to be your contrarian play you mentioned?
Yeah, so I don't know how super contrarian he'll be for the field, and we won't know until qualifying happens. But, Tyler Reddick runs great here. His first ever Cup start was a top 10 at this track. He ran good here earlier this year. He's a guy that if he gets hooked up on this track or this style track can be lights out fast. So the upside's always there for him to go out and lead a chunk of laps and finish top 5. You see his finishes there, a bunch of good finishes. Super fast driver and a driver that can deliver great performances. But he's also super risky. If you look at his points per race, it's super low because he qualifies up front a lot. You compare him versus everyone else on the range. He qualifies up front a lot and then has some bad results. But his upside's really good, and he will be different than the Toyota drivers that we mentioned and Kyle Larson. So he'll be a pivot off those guys and a contrarian one that won't see a ton of ownership most likely because of his price and because of where he's at juxtaposed to those drivers.
For sure. I love that. But let's get into a really important part of DFS, and that probably the most pivotal part is finding the appropriate dogs, whether that be a risky dog that's going to go out there and win you those GPP lineups or someone you can just rely on to put up consistent points. Let's talk about them, man. Who is someone in that let's say 6-7K range that you're liking as underdog this week?
So I'm going to start with Ricky Stenhouse, and anyone that knows NASCAR knows that this is the exact definition of a risky underdog. Ricky Stenhouse is my Chaos Williams. So, I won a couple grand on Chaos Williams getting that knockout in his first UFC fight. That went perfect. He was like 7,200 on the slate and got this killer knockout and won me a bunch of money, which thank you, Chaos. And it's basically a situation where you're like, okay, this guy's not elite anywhere. He's not elite at anything, but his knockout power can really set him apart, right? Ricky Stenhouse is not an elite driver. He's a good driver who, when he's on and he has his best day, can put up a huge DFS score. Or he wrecks, and he's one of the highest crash-rated drivers of the past decade, probably of the entire century so far. He crashes a lot. He's a huge crash risk. But when you look at his results earlier this year at this style track, he was 8th at Darlington, 8th at Kansas, and 7th at Charlotte. That was in a row, and you're seeing 3 top 10s on this style of track. Over the past 2 months, we haven't seen many intermediate tracks. It's been a lot of road courses and big, Poconos and different type of tracks. Well, now we get back to what's kind of his best style of track, his best style of racing, and what his team has looked the best at this year. Typically, he qualifies mid-pack or worse. He qualifies 22nd or 27th or something like that. So he offers place differential potential, point per position. So if he's qualifying 27th and finishing 8th, it's a huge number. That Goodyear 400 right there is his race here earlier this year. Scored 56 DFS points, which is a phenomenal total. And so, I'm sorry, that was Darlington. The race above that, the Advent Health 400, was actually here at Kansas, and he scored more DFS points. So that's what we're hoping from this play, is that he qualifies kind of poorly, but we know he has that upside and that he can run top 10. And then, as always with Ricky Stenhouse, he can crash. He has typically held a 50% crash rate. So 50% of the races he's getting involved in some sort of incident. So that's a high number. It scares you a little bit, but there's upside there with him.
I love the GPP plays. I'm more of a risky guy when it comes to DraftKings itself, so I like to hear that kind of stuff. But let's go a safer dog to almost wrap it up here. Who's somebody else that you take down low?
So someone I'm really interested in, this is a good contrarian option. I think he'll kind of be overlooked, is Justin Haley at 5,500. So Noah Gragson is the popular child in NASCAR right now. People love him. Cole Custer, Ty Dillon are full-time drivers that are more known and maybe have a little bit more goodwill with the fans. Justin Haley is in his rookie year, and he's quietly put together a nice, solid year. It's hard to see in terms of DraftKings results, and especially here lately, these are the track types that we've been on. But he's had some really good runs, and if you look at more like his Wikipedia page or just his results in every race, it's a lot of like 17th and 16th and 13th and really good performances that don't show up as top 10s or super high-end finishes. But at 5,500, we're not looking for this guy that's going to necessarily deliver an unbelievable score. We're looking for a good, say, 30 to 35 points to round out our lineup. There's not really other drivers in that range that are going to outscore that type of number. So that's the type of driver that can kind of make or break a slate for you. He rarely wrecks. He rarely puts himself in a bad spot. He's consistent and smart and safe. And that's the type, when you're looking for someone to kind of round out a lineup with, that's what I'm looking for, and I just feel more comfortable with him than I do a lot of drivers in that range, because at the end of the day, he's probably just going to be 17th, and it might not be more than a 22-point day, but it's going to be something I can count on. Whereas there's Ricky Stenhouse as the example, juxtaposed as he may be 35th after 20 laps because he puts it in the wall. And I just don't see that from Justin Haley. So as long as Haley can be there at the end of the race, we can see him 15th, 14th with a really, really good result. And if he qualifies 27th and offers that kind of upside, I'm really excited for that play.
I love it, man. There's your definition of like this week for the UFC. It's like it's an Elise Reed, right? Someone who doesn't have that same like GPP ceiling to go out there and score a ton of points, but she's got a good floor. She's got the ability to go out there, do well, put up enough points to really take you towards the higher end of the standings.
It's really any women's MMA fight where the number's really wide, right? I mean, they rarely get finished. They're going to the distance. They're going to land 100 strikes. So it's like, I'll take this chick at 7,200 that's going to score 40 points for me. So yeah, it's kind of like that. It's a nice safe number. Yeah, you might not have the complete GPP winnings upside, and in a lot of ways he still does, but you're going to get a good safe number that's going to let the rest of your lineup do the heavy lifting and hopefully deliver for you.
For sure. With that, dude, that is a lot of my notes covered. I got a few minutes left. You want to talk about any last DraftKings plays you like, or is that most of it out of the way?
That literally covered it all, man. I mean,
Perfect.
there's some good contrarian options. Probably the likes of Daniel Suarez. I don't know how contrarian they'll be, but Daniel Suarez and Austin Dillon in the mid range really interest me. Ty Gibbs is the last Toyota we did not talk about, so I'd like to highlight him as well. And then, when I'm looking for drivers who can win me a tournament, these are the type of plays that I'm interested in. So Daniel Suarez, even last week, showed top 5 speed. He got into contact with Christopher Bell, and then he spit on pit road late in the race, which killed his race, but he drove from the back to the front and had a top 5 car. He has looked really fast at certain tracks, especially this track type. And he's a driver that I can see run top 10 in this race, and contend for a great finish. And he will get some ownership. These people aren't completely numb to that aspect, but at 8,400, his price has slowly escalated up to the point where it's going to keep people off of him more than they probably should. And he is a little bit more inconsistent, like with a speeding penalty or with just making more mistakes, that he doesn't deliver constantly, that it just keeps people off of him, whether it be 5 or 10% lower than they should be. So he usually ends up slightly different. I think Bubba Wallace will get a bunch of ownership. I think there's other drivers in that range that'll get more ownership. So Suarez will get a decent number, but it won't be super high. Austin Dillon's always a top 15 driver. He just always is. I don't know of a racetrack that I would see the Cup Series go to that he would not have top 15 potential. Road courses, I don't really like him on, but anything 1.5 mile ovals, he's just solid and consistent. And another guy like Justin Haley, who's just there at the end. He was 13th here earlier this year, 9th at Darlington, 14th at Nashville is a good example too. He's just always kind of there. And then when he's on and when he's right, it's a top 10 finish. It's a 9th, it's a 10th place finish. And he can do just really smart things. Beginning of the year, he's 11th at Las Vegas. That's what I'm hoping for from him. And he's always going to offer a good price because he's never a high upside guy. At 7,700, he's a guy that can give you a 20 starting position, a 12th place finish, 40 points on DraftKings, and be a really good guy to round out your lineup. And he'll get okay ownership, 15, 18% in that scenario, but it's nothing that's super heavy in that 25, 30%, which is kind of what you're trying to be different from, right? So I like Austin Dillon as well. I also love that DraftKings has him as driving for Young's Motorsports. They're really bad at updating who these guys drive for and everything, but it just cracks me up seeing that there. But, Austin Dillon's just another driver I always like. And then lastly, Ty Gibbs. He's the last Toyota that we did not talk about. Like I said, he's making his first starts on these tracks in a Cup car. He's replacing Kurt Busch, who's out with a concussion. So he's only had 7 races. Believe he got back up to 10th at Michigan, which was delivering a really good result post a speeding penalty late in the race. He had a pit road penalty of some sort and had to drive back through the field and get that 10th. And he's been a little bit hit or miss, but that's what you expect from a rookie who has 15, 20 less races in this car than the rest of the field, right? They have more experience, more knowledge. But, he's 15th last race at Darlington. He looks solid. He's being smart. He's getting good results. And I think he's a driver that probably should have ran top 10 in that race. He should have finished 9th or 10th at Darlington, I believe. He really made his way the second half of the race through the field and looked better and sharper. I think that can happen again here at Kansas. This is more of a just go after it and race as hard as you can track. So I think he can really step up his game and just run as hard as he wants and can and potentially get a top 10 out of that. The price is really good at 7,200. And if the Toyota speed is what it was in May and carries through to this race weekend, he should have a car fast enough to finish top 10. And it really will just come down to whether he can make it happen or not.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. There we go. Covered both the betting and DFS angle side of things. I definitely got a few things that I got to look over and make sure I get that going, because I like a lot of things you said. Especially from the bet side of things, we got a plus 2,000 given out. We got some plus 350s, and the group winners, we got some plus 275s in the to lead their manufacturer. So a lot of stuff given out, and I really appreciate you taking the time and letting everybody in the Plays and Fades channel know how you're targeting the slate. Now, as you mentioned earlier, have Daily Fan Racing. Where else can they find all your work?
The best place is Twitter, man. Just like most people these days, follow me at Larkin8. And whenever I'm done writing stuff up or getting stuff ready, I post it on there, and you can just click on a link, right? So that's probably the best thing to do is just follow me on there. I got a free Discord if you want to jump in there too. We got, I think, right at 500 people in there, so a decent sized group. And then dailyfanracing.com. That's and it is a paid subscription thing. So you're looking for higher quality content, and I hope I deliver it. The guys that are super successful in the groups, they love me, and they're always going to be the ones that love you. But I've had really good success with it this year, and I'm really happy with the results. So I feel like we're doing a really good job, and hopefully, if you try me out, you'll enjoy it as well. We got weekly, monthly, yearly as well, so you can sign up and get all the way to this point next year if you wanted to. But lots of ways to at least try it out and see what you think, and then kind of go from there. But on that side, I'm probably writing anywhere from 10 to 12,000 words. This weekend I'll probably be hitting close to 15,000 words over the course of 24 hours written for these slates. Couple hour long podcasts, a lot of content. So we try to do as much as we can, provide as much content for the guys that do sign up, and then win you some money, hopefully.
Awesome. I love to hear it. All that stuff is in the description down below. His website, his Twitter. Maybe I'll throw his Discord in there after the fact as well. But I am in that Discord. I am. So maybe I'll sneak around to see what they have to say as well. But as always, thank you for coming on. Thank you for dropping all your knowledge. I really look forward to it. And you know what? I will have on the race this week and hopefully see some money going into the bank account. But I look forward to doing it again next week. I know we got another race coming up. Again, every Thursday, guys, come hang out on the Plays and Fades channel. We'll be talking some NASCAR. If you're watching this after the fact, now's the time to like, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Show Ryan some love. And with that, guys, enjoy the races this weekend. Let's make some money, guys. Cheers.